Hello guys and welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be talking about what I'm reading for the Jhalak Prize. I know a lot of people are talking about the Women's Prize for Fiction and they're reading the Women's Prize for Fiction. Honestly, I looked at the list this year and I was just like, you know, it's like not that exciting for me, right? There were a couple of books on there that, yeah, sounded interesting. When I looked at my library, they didn't have them in. They probably will have them in now because once the books get announced there, I just feel like that's what they start doing, right? But yeah, I just was like, I thought about last year and I was just like, whilst there was one book that really stood out for me, Memphis, and I absolutely ended up falling in love with that. That didn't even make it to the shortlist for the Women's Prize for Fiction. But overall, the reading experience wasn't that great and it just takes up a lot of time. And yeah, I don't know that I found it worth it, you know? So I had also heard that the Jhalak Prize had been announced and I have been wanting to read from the Jhalak Prize and just wanting to read different prizes that are not the Women's Prize for Fiction, right? Because it's just the most like commercial one for me. Anyway, maybe the cost of book price, but I feel like that's stopped now or been like reading, I can't recall. So especially the reason I wanted to read the Jhalak Prize is because it is specifically set up so that you can read books from authors of colour. So I believe it is just UK specific, so people, right, authors of colour living within the UK. I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me entirely, but I know it is set up for minority ethnic groups. So with every single book that you read, you are guaranteed that it is an author of colour, and which is just really nice because obviously we need more prizes that are just like going to celebrate them. I know obviously on these other mainstream prizes, you know, they've made an effort to do these things, but I think obviously having a prize that's solely dedicated is really nice because that way you're guaranteed to be reading books from authors of colour all the way around. So yeah, so I believe the prize was set up in 2017 and yeah, I've just been wanting to read from it for a long time, so I was like, this is the year that I'm going to make it happen. So I think at the time when I had like heard that the long list had been announced, it had already been out for like a week, and I remember looking just a very light look at my library online catalogue to see if they had any of the books, and I really felt like they didn't, right? So that might have changed now, but I also don't know how much that would have changed. With the Women's Prize for Fiction, I remember last year as well looking at some of the books that had been announced on the long list and they didn't have them. But like fast forward about like 3 weeks later, they had them. And I get it, for a library, it makes more sense to buy a book and then you know if it's nominated on a huge prize like the Women's Prize for Fiction, people are going to be reserving it. So they're going to be like, you know, borrowing and taking the book out. And you want it to also be commercially viable for the library. Whereas with a smaller prize like the Jhalak Prize, I guess if a library doesn't think that they have enough of that readership in the area, they're not going to order those books in. And my library does have a system, or like the Glasgow library system does have a library where you can order books in, but I remember maybe 2-3 years ago when I was doing that, none of the books I ordered were ever like purchased. And you know, they were all books that weren't just kind of like really mainstream ones, so I know that's probably the reason why they weren't purchased. And I feel like, yeah, if they don't have them in, it's unlikely that they will be buying them in. But anyway, a very long intro to say hello and welcome to my video about what I'm going to be reading from the Jhalak Prize. So the way I'm going to do it is I will have a pile which is my hell yes pile, my maybe pile, and then my no pile. And obviously the hell yes are the priorities, the kind of middle pile is if I have time and get to it, I will read that, and obviously no means I will not be reading that. I am not one of those people that feels like you have to read every single book on the prize list. Like, why would I waste my time reading a book that I don't think I'd be interested in? Obviously you can always be proved wrong on these things. I did it, you know, last year for the Women's Prize. Actually, I did some of my maybes. But otherwise, there are too many books in the world. I have a long ass list of books on my like to be read pile. Why would I bother wasting my time reading a book that I just don't think I'll be interested in? Yes, I might be pleasantly surprised and it could end up being a favourite, but you don't know what you don't know, so it's fine. So in terms of the Jhalak Prize, at the time I'm filming this, in 12 days, the shortlist will be announced and then the winner will be announced at the end of May. I believe, right, if I put my mind to it and, you know, if I don't decide to read all 12 books, which I won't be doing, I could read every single book that I want to read by the 30th of May. Obviously not by the 18th of April, that is ludicrous. So that's kind of what the timings are like for me. But let us dive into the books. And I'm going to go from the bottom, so from the reverse of which it's been like laid out on the page. So the first book we're looking at is Anassi's Gold, The Man Who Swindled the World. Instantly when I read this, I'm like, oh, I recognize something that I know and like, right? Anansi is one of the kind of myths or like stories that originates from Ghana. Anansi the spider is about him being a trickster. But I believe this book is actually a fiction book. So it says, when Ghana declared independence from Britain in 1957, Ghana's Independence Day is the 6th of March, if you didn't know, now you know. It immediately became a target for opportunists determined to lay hold of whatever assets colonialism hadn't already stripped. The military ousted the new nation's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, then falsely accused him of stealing the country's gold and hiding it overseas. Oh, this sounds absolutely fascinating. It says here, into this story stepped one of history's most charismatic scammers, a con man to rival the trickster god Anansi. I like how he's brought that together, that is really cool. He said that this guy, John, declared himself the custodian of the alleged trust fund, and you could claim a piece if only you would help him recover it with a small investment. And then over the 1970s and 1980s, this scam just grew. How interesting. Oh, I want to read this. I never thought, I've not heard of this before at all. Amazing. Yeah, that is going in my hell yes pile. This sounds very, very fascinating, and just a chance for me to learn more about Ghana's history. I wonder if my parents know this. I'm sure they probably do. It's not something maybe they thought to talk to us about. But yeah, very pleasantly surprised that's in the hell yes pile. So the next book on the list is Boundary Road, and this looks like a contemporary novel. I don't know about this one. It says here, a story of colliding lives, beguiling opportunities and reckless illusions. Also, I've decided to move my laptop here because honestly, I think I need to wear my glasses, and yeah, I just can't be asked to go and find them, to be honest. A compelling blend of comedy and tragedy, love, desire, fear and dreams on a London bus. I was going to say Boundary Road sounds like it's in London. I don't know why. I was just like, this to me, I know this is going to be a book set in London. So I'm glad that was confirmed. You just feel it when you're from there, you know? People get on and off and leave something of themselves behind, but two of the passengers have passed they can't escape. People can't stop talking, a giddy cocktails, monologues, dialogues, memories and gleeful anticipation. I feel like I won't actually like this book, like reading. I'm like, I feel like maybe the book will just like be okay, but I don't know that it'll be worth me reading it, you know? I don't know. Like it seems to be about loads of different people. So it says here, a man haunted by his past and the many parts of his family, but in love with the present, and all that's greeting his senses right now. A woman stifled by a lack of affection, but determined to do what's right. A man obsessed with architecture and in love with painting. I don't know, I know it talks about two passengers, but this doesn't sound like something I would want to read, I'm not gonna lie. But I also did just look up Boundary Road, and yes, it is in North London, I believe, if we're talking, no, Abbey Road, where is that? Okay, kind of northwest London, actually, I'm thinking. Just haven't opened the map up a little bit bigger. If Primrose Hills North, yeah, would be northwest London. Boundary Road. Well, okay, that's not where I expected it to be, because it's sort of near St John's Wood. Actually, what's the nearest station? Southampton. Okay. Oh, it's near Abbey Road. Right. Yeah, so this book actually is just teaching on the edge of the maybe and no pile for me. Let's just see how big the maybe pile is, and then maybe this moves into a no. It doesn't sound like something I want to read. The next book on the list is A Pebble in the Throat. Oh yeah, something I wanted to say that I like about this prize is that it mixes fiction and non-fiction, and there's also like within the non-fiction poetry as well, which I feel like other prizes obviously don't do. Like with the Women's Prize, they've gone fiction, and now they've announced their non-fiction prize as well. I like that within here you're getting everything. You're getting everything. Like, I just love it. Like, that first non-fiction book sounds absolutely delightful. I've not heard of it before. And the reason I was saying that is because this next book is called A Pebble in the Throat, Growing Up Between Two Continents, which looks like a memoir. Something set in Glasgow. A Pebble in the Throat is the coming-of-age story of Asama Mir's childhood growing up in 1970s Glasgow. Kind of been good, I tell you that. As a person of colour. No, I'm joking. I actually do not say that very light-handedly. But yeah, I can imagine this was a very hard time for her, because it says here, from a vivacious child to a teenage loner, Asma candidly shares the highs and lows of growing up between two cultures. And again, you know, if you add in the fact that you're growing up between two cultures, I get it. Trying to fit in at school and retreating to the safe haven of a home inhabited by her precious but distant little brother, and Helen and her family's Glaswegian guardian angel. It says, woven into this memoir is Asma's mother, and we follow her mother's own life as a young girl in 1950s Pakistan to 1960s Scotland and beyond. Both mother and daughter fight and are defeated and triumph in different battles in this sharp, moving story. This sounds good. I want to read it. It's going in the yes pile. But this sounds delightful, so yes, I will definitely be picking this up. I need to charge this battery, so BRB. Right, loves, I hope that's a similar-ish angle because your girl tried. The next book on this list is A Flat Place, and this looks like a non-fiction novel about nature, specifically flat land. The author says her earliest memory is of a wide flat field glimpsed from the backseat of her father's car in Lahore. As an adult in Britain, she discovers many more flat landscapes to love, and it names a couple of places across the UK. It says these bare, haunted expanses remind her of the flat place inside herself, the place created by trauma. And it goes on to talk about the author and her diagnosis of CPTSD, so complex post-traumatic stress disorder, the product of a profoundly disrupted and unstable childhood. This sounds really interesting to me. The author is British. It says Noreen's British Pakistani heritage makes her a partial outsider in these landscapes, both colonizer and colonized, inheritor and dispossessed. I love the sound of this because I think nature is such a soothing balm for the overwhelm that we all face in life, right? And then particularly if you add in a life full of trauma. And I think for me personally, in like the past year, just finding how soothing nature has been and how much of how soothing, how much of a kind thing it's been to me, how much has been able to help me regulate my nervous system. I appreciate more women of colour talking about these things, because nature writing, whilst it's not something that I read a lot of, it is one of those areas where there are two voices that are underrepresented. Women's voices, and then of course people of colour's voices. And add in the nice intersectionality of women and people of colour, there you go. You've got an even bigger underrepresentation. This sounds really, really good to me. I am going to put it in my hell yes. Even though I don't feel a huge hell yes affinity for it, I think I'll read it and be like, I don't know, like I'm finding kin, you know, like people who, and I think as well the thing with nature and just like the things that she's describing, right? I think nature has a really powerful way of mirroring to ourselves like the kind of like insignificance of our lives, and I mean that in a really loving way, that when you're going through these massive problems and then you look at the expanse of the world, I think sometimes it can really, one, help you put things in perspective, but also just make you feel like everything is going to be okay. So this sounds beautiful. The next book on the list is Elsewhere, and this book actually looks to be like a book that hasn't published yet. It says here you can pre-order it and it ships in June, which is interesting. I know obviously like prize submissions, they can submit books that are coming out I guess within a certain year, so they'll get the proofs ahead of time, but I'm like, how does everyone else read it? I don't know if the Kindle version is out before this, because this is, oh, it's coming as a paperback, because I thought, yeah, maybe it's the hardback. That's fine, but no. Anyway, it says here, in her highly anticipated English language debut, Yan Gi explores isolation in 9 iridescent, witty and wondrous tales, both contemporary and ancient, real and surreal. Stories in Elsewhere range from China to Dublin to London and Stockholm. This is so funny to me because there is another book on the list by an author, Lea Akuo, and one of her short story collections, that's how I got introduced to her. It's called Elsewhere Home, and it's a collection of short stories as well. Yeah, so it's just funny to me for some reason. So it says here, from a group of writers lounging on the edge of a disaster zone to a Mandarin ostracized from his old court trying to avoid assassination, and from a woman who inexplicably loses her voice to a couple who meet all too fleetingly at a cinema in Dublin. These are strange and beguiling stories of dispossession, longing and the diasporic experience. Diaspora? How do you say that? Say diaspora, diasporic? I actually never heard that word before. Anyway, this book is going in my no pile. It just doesn't sound that interesting to me. I think it could be one of those books that I read and it's a 3-star for me, but I think just because there are so many books on the list, I'd rather really prioritise books that sound incredibly exciting to me. So for now, it's in the no pile. The next book on this list is Fire Rush, and this is really funny because it was long-listed, I believe, and maybe also shortlisted for the Women's Prize, I don't know. Oh yeah, it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize as well last year, and it was one of the books that I said didn't sound like something I'm interested in, and I will be saying the same thing now. It is about a girl that lives when she goes raving at her friend, but then she meets a man and she falls deeply in love with him, and he offers her the chance of freedom and escape. It says after their relationship is brutally cut short, she goes on a dramatic journey of transformation that leads her to Jamaica, where past and present collide with explosive consequences. nothing about that sounds appealing to me. I think for me, I probably would need to know a little bit more about it, but like based off of that, I'm not willing to go and find out more about it. I'm just willing to say it's not a book that I think I would enjoy tremendously. So that's in the no pile for me. The next book is Bright Fear, and this is by an author who I've seen her poetry collection, I believe it's called Flesh. I'm not sure, I believe the word is French, so I'm probably saying it wrong. Yeah, from the award-winning debut Flesh, but I believe that's a poetry collection. Oh, this is also a poetry collection. It's yes, it's in the Faber and Faber style of poetry. It says here, through poems which engage fearlessly with intertwined themes of identity, multilingualism and post-colonial legacy, Chan's latest work explores the family's evolving dynamics as well as microaggressions stemming from queerphobia and anti-Asian racism that accompanied the COVID pandemic. Oh, she's covering a lot of topics here. It says, yet Bright Fear remains deeply attuned to moments of beauty, tenderness and grace. I'm going to put this in my maybe pile because I have been wanting to read her debut poetry collection for a while. It's just one of those you see all the time everywhere, so I'm just like, I guess I want to read that, why not? But I'm unsure if I'll like her poetry style, and then hearing about the themes and stuff, I'm like, it doesn't scream hell yes to me, but it seems like something I could be interested in, so that's in the maybe pile. So another book that we have is 12 Words for Moss, and yeah, I don't know if I already said this, but I love that this prize, oh I did say it when I was talking about the fiction book, but just love it, just love the variety that you've got, these fiction books, non-fiction books, poetry collections, love it. Anyway, this is another kind of nature non-fiction piece, and this is about moss. So it says that the author celebrates the unsung hero of the plant world with a unique blend of poetry, nature writing and memoir. Oh, that's quite nice. So it's got poetry in there. Oh, sounds lovely. And it says, making her way through the wetlands from Somerset to County Tyrone, Burnett discovers the hidden vibrancy and luminous beauty of these overlooked places. She also takes strength from them as she recovers from her grief at her father's death. As she meditates on and renames her favourite species of moss, she finds a healing power in language and draws inspiration from the resilience and tenacity of her plant and human friends. Sounds delightful. Everything I said about the other kind of nature writing book applies to this, and I think as well, you know, when you're dealing with things like grief, but also the fact that she draws inspiration from resilience and tenacity, and I think that is one of those other things that I think nature and plants have so much to teach us about, like resilience and life. You know, like there's so many things that happen that are a cycle and are a part of life, and yeah, a lot of the things that we experience are part of a cycle, but obviously as humans, and it's so natural, and when we're going through things it feels like the most like life-ending thing ever, without knowing that, you know, you don't know when your life is going to end, but knowing that all of that is part of a cycle and it could just be the smallest part of your cycle. But it's hard to have that perspective when you're going through something so crushing. But this is a book that is going in my maybe pile. Yeah, I'm gonna put this on the maybe because I think the other one sounds more exciting. But I'm also forgetting where I put the other. No, I put the other one in the hell yes. Good. So Small Worlds is the next book, and this is by Caleb Azuma Nelson. And I loved his debut. I'm struggling to remember what it's called. I believe it's something to do with water. I could be wrong. I don't know if I'm thinking of fresh water, but that's not him. That's like the American author. Or are they Canadian? I don't know. But this book is about a character named Stephen and dancing, and it's talking about how it is the one thing that can solve his problems, from church to being in his band, grooving with his best friends, dancing alone to his father's records. It says here, Stephen has only ever known himself in song, but what becomes of him when the music fades? And I absolutely love this because part of like my interest as well is I dance, but I'm also really interested in dance as like a form of movement for kind of like dealing with trauma. Dance is so wonderful for joy and expressing joy, and in a lot of African cultures, you know, dance is used for a variety of things, you know, for, like I said, celebrations, expressing joy, but also, you know, in funerals, but also just for a variety of things, you know, like for summoning rain, for things like you have like fertility dances and things like that. So I'm very much interested in that whole kind of connection. So I'm really intrigued to see what this is about, because I believe this will probably be set in like South London. And yeah, I think it's a really nice topic for a young boy, because So many people can move, so many people can dance very well, so intrigued to see what this is about. So this will be going in my hell yes pile, mainly because I really love the author's work from before. The next book on the list is Auka, and it says it is a novel about belonging in a world where all things are on the move: people, ideas, food, and not least music. It says Junior leaves his family in Accra to travel to the mythical Caribbean island of Fumaz, where the revolutionary philosophy of peopleism just about keeps its flame alive against the forces of an old-style command centre political bureaucracy and a stifling trade blockade from the big imperialist neighbour to the north. That is a long sentence, Jesus. And I cut off the beginning of it where it names the guy. It seems like this book focuses on like the full things in the beginning, right? So this character seems to be a scientist, but then he also has to, so it says as a scientist he must find some way of rescuing the island's farmed sweet rice industry. As a farmer, he sees how much of his West African food has journeyed across the Atlantic to make the island's unique cuisine. As a musician, he becomes part of the spirit that puts the island on the world stage. It goes on to say a couple of other things, but I guess it's just probably our character pondering and wondering about, like, you know, the influence of other things and just changing landscape of life, it would seem to me. It seems here that the prose in here is going to be quite flowery, maybe, only because it says here, and there's always a texture of the language to enjoy in a book whose prose is as flowing, elegant and heartfelt as the music that moves freely back and forth across the seas between Africa and the Caribbean. I don't know why I feel like the language might, I could be wrong, be a bit like Memphis. I really enjoyed the writing style of the author, but I could be wrong. We are nearing the end, and one of the other books on the list is Self-Portrait as Othello, which sounds absolutely great. Sounds so good. I cannot wait to read this. This is going in my hell yes. This is the author reimagining himself as Othello in the 21st century. So, and I actually really liked Othello as a Shakespeare player. I really quite like Shakespeare. I don't mind, like, I didn't mind studying him in school, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't mind it at all. I think the plays are so witty and clever, and I think even now when people perform them, you can just translate so well to like modern day. It says here, the interlocking poems of his second collection, Self-Portrait as Othello, imagine Othello in an urban landscape of modern London, Paris and Venice, and invent the kind of narrative he might tell about his intersecting identities. Then it says here, portraying himself as Othello, the author refracts his European travels and considers the black male body, its presence, transgressiveness and vulnerabilities. Othello's intertwined identities as immigrant and black, which often operate as mutually reinforcing vectors, speak to us in the landscape of the 21st century Europe. So it sounds really good. I cannot wait to read this. And then the final one on the list is River Spirit, which is by Lea Akuo, which is the author that I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the short story collection. And I, like I said, absolutely loved her book Elsewhere Home. She published another book since then. She has published another book since then. It didn't sound that interesting to me, so it wasn't something that I was rushing to read. And I sadly feel the same about this, but I think I will try and read this. This is set in the 1880s in Sudan, and it says when Akuni and her brother are orphaned in a village raid, they are taken in by Yassine, a young merchant whose vow to care for them will tether him to Akuni throughout their lives. As revolution brews, Sudan begins to prize itself from its Ottoman rulers, and everyone must choose sides. River Spirit is a powerful tale of corruption and unshakable devotion to a cause, to one's faith, and to the people who become family. Now, if she wasn't the author, I just wouldn't be interested in this. This is why I'm kind of like, So I'm going to put it in my maybe pile. So that is all the books on the shortlist, and unfortunately for you and for everyone, I have forgotten the books that I said, most of the books that I said were hell yeses, maybes, and no's. But I know obviously once I'm going through like the video and stuff like that, I'll know which ones they are. But I hope this video just serves as a bit of like information about like the Jhalak Prize and maybe some other books that you know you might have heard from me talking about and just reading above, and think, oh, that is something that I actually might be interested in, because I think there's a nice variety of books on this list. And for me, I don't feel like there's one book that I was like, oh my god, yes, that is exactly my taste. But I found some books that I never would have heard about that I really want to read, which is really for me the whole point of prizes, right? And I think it's important that they are from writers of colour. This is the worst time to be filming this last bit because I can hear the bin men outside. So I just had a look on my library's catalogue to see which of these books that they did have, and I am pleasantly surprised. They have 9 out of the 12 books, which is absolutely delightful. And I know that was not the case when I checked maybe like 3 weeks ago or something, because I was just like, so I'm really happy about that. 2 of the books that they didn't have is fine by me because I didn't want to read them anyway. And then the other book that they didn't have is Othello, is it Self-Portrait as Othello, which I'm happy to buy because I have not been buying any books because I've been borrowing from my library so heavily, so that's fine. But yes, I'm so happy about that. Like, obviously I know what I said in the beginning, but like I said, I think that was not the case before. I was gonna say I could be wrong, but no, I had actually, like, you know, very lightly checked, but there were a couple of books that was just not coming up. So I'm really happy about that. And one of the books, actually, Boundary Road, I think it is published by a small publisher, or I've not heard of that publisher anyway, so that might be why they don't also have it. Should have been meant out there. But yes, so I'm away to reserve the books that I want to read, and yeah, I will update you. I'll do a reading vlog for the books that I do read, so more long videos to come. But I really do hope that this has kind of like served as a bit of inspiration for books that you might not have heard of but do sound interesting to you, and you may be able to like find a new favourite. But that is all from me. I will catch you in another video. Bye!